Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And holy schmoly, we're really going to be talking today about how to make your business successful. As in, wait, here's my visual aid. It's all about making money, folks. You know, even if you are a nonprofit, you are not a no profit. But we're going to be talking today about how small business owners can really take steps to make the big money and get the clients that we really want and we really deserve. And how to bridge that gap between being the, oh, I'm just going to barely break even to, okay, I'm doing really, really well. So please join me in welcoming Christian Banach to our program today. Welcome, Christian. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Deb. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
I am too, because, you know, I'm one of those people that would like to make that leap. So it's going to be so fun to hear some of the tactics and strategies that you have to share with us. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into this. So Christian Banach is the Principal and Chief Growth Officer of Christian Banach LLC, a business development and growth consultancy that helps award-winning marketing agencies and martech companies predictably land 6- and 7-figure opportunities with companies such as Heineken, Signet Jewelers, and Chipotle. A lifelong entrepreneur, Christian started a concert promotion and experiential marketing agency in high school and would grow it to over 10 million in sales. Holy schmoly. There he worked with Grammy award-winning artists like Lady Gaga and Pitbull and brands such as Disney and Toyota. Outside work, Christian is a devoted dad, a health and wellness enthusiast, and aspiring competitive pickleball player. There we go. I got it right that time. So again, Christian, welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing very, very well. It is a nice and cold day here in Chicago, but it is warm inside. So I'm excited for the conversation.
Perfect. I love it. Well, I always like to know from my guests how they got to where they are today, because you have had quite the career already. And I just, I find it very interesting to know how my guests got to where they are today and how you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Yeah, well, great. Well, again, thank you for having me. But, I have always been entrepreneurial. I guess my first
high school. Oh, my gosh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, even before high school, I was the kid in the neighborhood that was mowing everybody's lawn and going door to door and somehow convinced my parents to, go out and buy some lawn equipment so I could take this on enterprise a little bit further. So that's really where it kind of first started. Even probably before that, I was buying and selling baseball cards and, and doing it kind of, after school with the kids. But where the business really started, that was a nice kind of way to, make some extra money in high school and whatnot. But what happened for me was the story and how I started my business was I was going to teen dance clubs and concerts in the area. And while I had fun at those, I saw really an opportunity that was being unmet. The music at that time was really changing and evolving, but those nightclubs that we were going to, the teen nightclubs and concerts, weren't really evolving with it. So I gathered a group of friends together and we rented out a banquet hall and we booked all the DJs that we thought were cool. And we went from, school to school and promoted in the malls and all of that. And we threw an event at this local banquet hall, and it actually went over phenomenally well. We made some money, met a lot of people, and decided, wow, let's do another one of these. And that's kind of how my initial business started. Started off in banquet halls in the Chicago suburbs, and I went away to college then, and that then eventually grew into bigger and bigger events where we were doing, large scale concerts. along the way, I got involved with experiential marketing. So I got approached actually by an agency that's, recognized our concert promotion capabilities and said, you know what, we have this promotional event. We need some help putting up posters. And that was something we were doing for our own concert. So we had the team to do it. However, they came to me and they were paying me like 10 times what I normally would get paid because it was for some big corporate company. So I was like, wow, this is interesting, that we can get paid to do what we normally do, a lot more money. So that ended up growing into that activation went well. We started doing more and more of those. And then the light bulb went on in my head saying, well, why are we working with these agencies? Why don't we go right to the source? So then we started to try to get into the big companies. And eventually we were working with, like you had mentioned, Disney and Toyota and some, other large organizations. So the business, really grew to a point where, it was our own concerts and events with big artists, like you had mentioned. And then we had this other side of the house, which was more experiential marketing for these big corporate companies. And that's how things went along really well for me. I mean, I think from the first event that I did at that banquet hall, 15 years later, I was still doing these events and everything was great. But where things started to get bumpy was the recession in 2008.
Right. 2008 got a little, people went, ew, can't spend money.
Yes, exactly. And, like a lot of the clients that I'm advising now, I did not really have a sales process. I just did good work. People found me and that was that. So I couldn't rely on that anymore. So I ended up going out and hiring a sales consultant that came in and really evaluated my business and gave me, a lot of training into sales and marketing. And it really opened my eyes up to things. And I kind of struggled along still for a couple of years. There was a lot of things going on personally in my life, and I was just ready for a change. So after a couple of years, I ended up closing down my business, and I ended up going to work at advertising and marketing agencies in a business development role, taking what I learned as a business owner, as well as what I learned from that consultant. And I spent then about 10 years working at various agencies, independent agencies, holding company agencies, and really found, though, along the way that my superpower, if you will, was really getting into those big corporate companies, the Fortune 500 type companies. And everybody, not I'm say everybody, but most people find the pitch and the close, very sexy. While I like that, I found that getting your foot in the door in the first place,
the scary part.
Yeah, for a lot of people it is, but for me, I enjoyed it. It was the hunt, the chase is really what I enjoyed. So that's really where I kind of carved out a niche for myself and added a lot of value to the companies I worked with. And then we'll kind of fast forward to the pandemic, 2020, and businesses were going out of business. People were closing. There's a lot of scariness, as everybody can remember. And it felt like deja vu all over again to that 2008 recession. The difference here was, instead of me feeling like I needed a consultant to help me, I felt like I was now that consultant that could go and help others. So that became the genesis for the idea of starting the business that I have now. And I ended up leaving that agency and forming the company that I have now. And now 2 years later, we're working with a lot of really great, small businesses, mostly advertising and marketing, martech type companies, and helping them, get their foot in the door with those big corporate companies.
Right. And I love that story. And I talk to a lot of people on the program about how to do sales and things like that. And it's funny because anytime you talk sales, people make the face, right? Ew, I don't want to do sales. And the sad thing is, a lot of times we've had a bad experience with it. And you were fortunate enough to work with someone who gave you good advice and motivated you and things like that. But what I really love is that, way back when you were little, you just went forward. You never saw obstacles. And so, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things is, we all have that little voice in our head that's either saying, go for it, or, oh my God, you're stupid, don't do that. And so how do we get past the little voice that is telling us don't do that to go for it?
Yeah. I wish there was an easy answer to that.
Aside from just flipping the little person, flip them off your shoulder there, right?
Yeah. I think for me, it's just been something like I enjoy the challenge. I don't see these as problems. I see them as opportunities. And I think that's, maybe it's my parents that grew, that kind of raised me that way. Maybe it was just my own experiences that I had. And I can't say that it's like that with everything that I do. There's certain things that pop up that I still get, struggle with. But, I really, it boils down to trying to have confidence in yourself and belief that in yourself that you can accomplish whatever you set out to do. And some things are going to come easier, than others. But I can use a story just recently that happened to me. And as you had mentioned, I'm an aspiring competitive pickleball player.
I couldn't say it, but we knew what it was.
Yeah. I started 6 months ago. I have, advanced pretty quickly, I would say. But I joined my first tournament this past weekend. And I was very excited to now really kind of test. I've certainly played against other people, but not in a tournament setting. I will admit I lost every single match in the tournament.
But you did it.
But I did it. And, there's two ways that you can look at it. Should I be disappointed and consider quitting? Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was or advanced as I was. Maybe this isn't the sport for me. Or do I see this as an opportunity, that a learning curve of, this is what I need to do to get to the next level, and what are the positives can I take from it? And I'm taking the positives there. But I think there are different ways to look at the same, the whole, is the glass half full or half empty? And I just know that if I put my mind to something, I will figure out a way to get it done. So, and I encourage, everybody to take that try to take that same mentality to whatever you're doing, business or personal.
Right. I there's one of my favorite memes, and it floats across on Facebook every once in a while. And it's, people are missing the point. The glass isn't half full or half empty. It's refillable. And I love that, because it really is the, no matter what you're seeing, how are you going to learn and build from that? And that really is the thing. If you get told no, figure out why. If you lose the match, okay, do you need a different coach? Do you need a coach? I mean, and all of these things. And I think especially when we're starting out in business, we take the no's so personal. And and especially when this business is our baby, it's what we're pouring our life into. And somebody says, nah, Christian, not, or they don't even return your calls or respond to your emails, right? And you're like, oh my God, but as you said, it's about having that courage and figuring out, okay, maybe they don't like email. Maybe they need a different pitch, all of those various things.
Yeah, I would say a couple other things to add on to that. One is trying to detach yourself from the outcome. I think that's been key for me as well. And the other thing is to enjoy, it's related, but enjoying the journey. It's not necessarily about winning the pickleball tournament, but it's the enjoyment of, the training, the camaraderie of meeting other people, the going to the tournament, the exploration, and I think it's the same thing in business. It's not just about landing the client. It's about enjoying the day-to-day of, creating your business and everything else that goes into it as well. So, because if you're not enjoying the journey, I hate to break it to you, but you're not going to, enjoy the outcome at the end either. You're not going to be satisfied.
Yeah. And we have to get over the fact of no is bad. It is, it's just no is a learning thing. And I tell people, the worst that's going to happen is they tell you no. The best that's going to happen is they tell you yes. I've started a new business venture based on dealing with my life in post-cancer, and and how we're kind of building a community and all sorts of things. And so I was reaching out to potential business partners, total cold calls. Now, I mean, it is, I've done cold calls knocking on doors. Oh God, I hate those. But, when you're just emailing somebody, it's really, it's not too painful. And so I contacted this one company just through their contact us page on their website. I mean, and said, hey, do you have an affiliate program? Here's what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. Next day, I got an email from the president. Now, it is a small company. I mean, it's not like I was reaching out to, say, a Heineken, and the president responded. But, it's, and of course, what he told me, he said, we obviously want to explore this. My mom died of cancer, and so I had that personal thing in there. But, at the very least, I was going to get ignored. Okay, that happens. But I had to take that step in order to go further with this partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think what's also key, for putting this more in the lens of business is looking at it in what can you give of value back before you're asking for anything of value back from them. And I think that's been key from a sales standpoint. I mean, if you really believe in your product or your service and it can solve a problem, and you almost have a responsibility to try to get that service out there, that product or service. And if you're not confident in what you're offering, then it does make it a lot more challenging, because then you do feel like, oh, I'm annoying this person, or you're not worthy of it. But if you have something that you really believe is great, you have every right, and you should be knocking on their door and trying to get it in front of them, because
and it's their loss if they say no.
Right. Absolutely. So, and if they don't say no, it doesn't necessarily mean that your product service is any, less valuable. It's, it just means that maybe they're not the right timing, or there may not be the right person, for that. So there's a variety of reasons, but I think, as long as you feel confident in what you're doing, and you really feel like you're solving, a problem, that somebody's experiencing, then, I think by all means, you should be, exploring that and trying to reach out to them.
Right. And one of the things that is absolutely critical, and you've got this on your website and on the notes you sent us in advance, is you have to have your ducks in a row before you reach out. And, if I had reached out to that person and said, hey, I'm doing this new business thing, you want to be part of it? I really would have had no response. But because I was able to say, we're going to do this and this and this, then he could focus on, here's why we need to say yes or no. And I think one of the hardest things, especially when we're starting out in business, is finding our niche. So talk to us more about why that is so absolutely important, as opposed to, I'm going to solve the world's problems. Why do we need to have a niche or a niche, or however we're going to say that word?
Yeah, I don't know. I never know how to pronounce that either. But no, 100% agree. I think especially when you're starting off, you can't be all things to all people. And I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end of things, and it's just things that seem irrelevant, to you, and you ignore those things.
Right.
So, when we're working with clients, one of the first things that we do is we first try to, again, like I started to talk about the problem, like what are the problems that you're solving? And then trying to figure out, okay, who is experiencing those problems? And you want to, we believe there, the niches are in the riches. There's a lot of, cliches and sayings that are out there. But you can really start to speak their language and understand their pain points that they're experiencing. You can start to create content, sales and marketing collateral that really speaks to them. And if you're then on the receiving end of something like that, it's just going to resonate with you a lot better. Like you get my world, you know where we're coming from. We're speaking the same language there. And it sounds like, in your case, that's, what you did. You didn't blindly just send a message to anybody. Like, you had done some research into thinking that this is going to be a good fit, for you. So you, in many ways, niche down. For us, in our company, while we do work with a lot of different types of companies, our primary focus is with advertising agencies and martech companies. And the reason, being is, we create our content. We understand the pain points that those agencies are experiencing. We can speak their language. We, from a sales and marketing standpoint, we can build a list of prospects that we want to target. We can run ads against those prospects. So we can show up and continually be in front of them. Now, if we tried to boil the ocean and go after everybody, we would not be able to create sales and marketing messaging that would resonate with everybody. In addition, we wouldn't, where do you even begin? There's so many businesses, that are out there, where do you even begin marketing and trying to reach them? So, I really encourage, think about, where do you have a story to tell? Like, had you have past experience working, with those types of companies in the past, in that industry or that size of company? There's a lot of different varieties of ways to look at, how to niche down. We can talk about that maybe in a second. So where do you have maybe some past experience? Where do you have a passion as well? Where are you? For me, maybe pickleball is something I should be exploring since it's a passion of mine.
You never know.
You never know, right?
It's definitely one of those things that a lot of people are getting into. So that gives you a connection with them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, where do you have that? Because you have to have a story to tell, because even if you were to land that meeting, for example, with a big client or any client, you need to back it up. And if you've never worked in their, sector before, it's going to be a much bigger leap to try to convince them to want to work with you. So I definitely think that is one of the big keys, is trying to figure out, pick a lane and stick to the lane and try your best to kind of penetrate that. Now, once you get to a certain scale and size, and you're having a track record of success, you can start to look at what are some maybe adjacent type categories. So, for us, we really actually started with just advertising and marketing agencies. Now we're thinking about, we are, expanding into more martech companies. So they're still advertising and marketing related, but they're more on the tech side. And then for the future, what we see ourselves, okay, so now we'll have more tech experience. How do we go after other tech companies that maybe aren't in the marketing space? So it's an evolution, but there's going to be a story, a connective thread to go through each of those. But that might be a couple of years, or more down the road for us, until we've really exploited, as much as we can this particular sector.
Right. And it is scary when we tell people you need to niche down, because people are thinking we're leaving money on the table. Yeah. But, if you're not speaking specific enough so people know this is why I need to work with you, that money's never even going to make it to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And we get this type of pushback as well, where they're really scared to pick a lane because they think then that they're going to lose, all of these other opportunities. And, one thing that I'll say is you're still going to get opportunities that come to you. It's just your more proactive sales and marketing efforts need to be focused, because you don't have you have a limited resources. Now, it doesn't mean people aren't going to come to your website. It doesn't mean that other people are going to find you at networking events, and your personal connections and things like that are going to happen. And very rarely have I ever seen somebody, a personal connection, say, well, I was on your website and it only says you work with advertising and marketing agencies. We don't want to work with you. That generally doesn't happen. So so just keep in mind, and keep in mind too, this is not, if you are working with a lot of different clients, we're also not saying go and fire all those other clients. Continue to work with them, but again, from your more proactive marketing and sales efforts, you need to focus there. And then over time, you're going to build up that roster. And yes, slowly but surely, some of those other clients may fall away. So I would really argue that you're not leaving any money on the table, because, like, to your point, you wouldn't have had that money otherwise. You're gonna, there's far more to gain there is to lose from this approach.
Right. And sometimes it is beneficial to tell them no. And say, hey, it's not a good fit. But I always like to then say, here's who I can refer you to. Sure. Because then you make everybody happy. And that's the key is, that company is going to remember, okay, we weren't able to work with Deb, but she referred to us referred to a great person for us. But I remember that. And so the next time they're thinking, hey, who do we, they remember me, and then okay, well, now I've got a good match for Deb. And then obviously the whoever you refer to is going to be happy, especially if it works out. But, when we get caught up in we have to take every single client thing, it is definitely a trap, because what happens is if you're not 100% bought into it, for whatever reason, you're not going to give 100% work. And, do you really want to be doing work that is just kind of
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I think and it's tough as a small business owner, right? Because you got to keep the lights on.
Right. Yeah. And you're thinking, and sometimes you're right. We have to say, okay, we're going to take that client.
Yeah. But I think the best way around that is to have a sales and marketing an effort. So if you have a full pipeline, you have the confidence that you can say, you know what, I don't need to sacrifice and work with somebody who's not a great fit, because I know that there are 10 other prospects that are in our pipeline, and I can be much more selective in, who I work with. But if you're not doing sales and marketing efforts, and, you're just kind of relying on what comes through the door, you may be putting yourself in a vulnerable situation where, you have to take whatever it happens to be. So, and we talk with a lot of clients now and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing really well, but they are, they think they're doing well, but they are unfortunately having to take on a lot of those clients that aren't great fits. However, if they were to work with a firm like ours, or even do things internally, like we advise them to do, they could be more selective and, start to then work with some bigger clients that are going to be a better long-term fit for them.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the important thing is, do you want to have the onesie, twosie clients, a lot of those, or the big clients where you spend a lot? Now, you do have to watch that because we all know you don't ever want to put all your eggs in that one basket. I worked for a marketing agency when I was starting out. Great place. I loved it. We had several very long-term clients, and we had one that was about 45% of our business. He'd been with us a real long time. They got a new director of marketing who did not like us. And more importantly, wanted to bring in his own team. And so we got fired. And when you lose 45% of your business, that's a hit. And it is hard because we've got those favorite clients, right? And we can focus on them. Okay, just know that it's almost like you're an employee. You've put everything there. What happens if that goes away? And so, yeah, you need a plan if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say that's kind of the reverse side of things. Like it may sound like a great situation to have a big client, but you put yourself in a very vulnerable situation. We call it a gorilla client.
Right.
You really want to avoid having any client make up 20 or more percent of your revenue. Ideally, it's 10% or less, because then if they were to move on, the business keeps rolling. But when you lose somebody that's 45%, that's not good. You're most likely doing layoffs and things like that. So. But similarly, you may be thinking, oh, well, I'm great. I have this one client, they're paying me all this money, they're Heineken. And then I have some smaller clients. I would not rest on your laurels at that point. You still, need to be out there, and you need to start, leveling that off and get your next, big client. So now, you can split that. Now they're only 20%. Then you got to get the next one. So, it's a constant, battle, if you will, but it's important. It's really important to kind of have that long-term vision of where you want to go and keep that pipeline full.
Right. And it really is, if you've got that situation where you've got the one biggie and, several, okay, then maybe it's time that you get, a more staff, something along, so that they can help you develop and have, so that you are just expanding. And as you said, so that 30% client now is 10 because you brought on additional clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think depending on the stage of where you're at in business, if you're, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, maybe, more than likely the new business and sales function probably falls on the owner or the founder to do. But once you start to get a larger in size, maybe you're in 10-person range, that's when you really should start looking at, bringing out outside, resources, whether that's an internal hire or like an outsource type of firm, because you're just going to need to grow. And it's difficult. You may be stuck working too much in the business than, on the business. So, yeah, definitely, there's going to become a point, depending on where you're at, where you're going to need to bring in some outside resources to help, keep that pipeline full.
Right. It was funny when I was reading through the materials. One of the first things that I was thinking, we talk about the little voice that is there, and the little voice that says, you're not big enough, you're not, not all of those things. How do you deal with that? Because that's going to be probably one of the first things that people say is, sure, having a 6 or 7 figure client, more than one, is good, but I'm not big enough to deal with that. What do you tell those folks?
Yeah. I think it boils down to what we started talking about a little bit before is having a problem that you can solve, having a niching down as well, and then being able to offer a unique perspective on how to solve that problem. Because you're right. If you are a generalist that, I can do, I'll use examples from my world, right? We do all types of marketing, right? And we can do them for all types of companies. And, we don't really have any strong point of view on any one way to do it,
we can just do it all.
We just do it all, right? You're right. Heineken doesn't need that. They have other agencies that can do that. Now, think about it from niching down standpoint where, you potentially can solve a specific problem on, let's say, how to target Gen Z consumers, right? You have a very interesting perspective on how to do that for people that are in the alcohol and beer space.
That is pretty specific.
So now you're very specific. And if you're Heineken, you have access to a lot of different agencies. But if you have that problem of trying to connect with Gen Z, it doesn't matter to you whether that's a 5-person company or a 5,000-person company. If they can solve that one specific problem that you have, they're willing to work with you. But you're right. If all things to all people, they are not going to pay attention to something like that. They have other people that have other agencies that they could work with, other companies they could work with that have a bigger track record and more resources and might be a safer bet for working with those types of companies. But a very specific challenge to a very specific audience. And the other layer I'll throw on there that I mentioned is having a point of view on that. So again, if your solution is just the same thing that everybody else is going to say and do, probably not that interesting. But if you have something unique to add and a different kind of way to do it, that's going to get the attention of these big companies. And I can tell you, a lot of our clients, we work with agencies that are maybe 5 to 10 people on up to, several hundred people. And a lot of our clients that are in that smaller category, are working with those big companies as well. But they have what I've just talked about, the problem, the offer, as well as the niche.
Right. And then the other little voice that I hear, is the little voice saying, how the heck do you even start? How do you figure out who you need to reach out to at those companies? I mean, it was a fluke. I know it was a fluke that I sent in a customer service form and or customer service request, and it ended up at the president. That was, so that's the other thing is people are thinking, okay, I want to work with a big, huge company. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So how do you get past that point?
Yeah. Well, it starts with what we just talked about is understanding really what the problem is, what who you can serve that for, and having a point of view. But let's say we have that now, right? We know, we know how to do Gen Z marketing really well. We have, some background in alcohol, type of spirits. We have a point of view on it. But now, to your point, what do we do now with that information? I think, the first step is then, you really want to build a list and think about who is the market here. Let's stay on kind of the beer. I could use a beer, right now.
I know. It's Friday. It's Friday the 13th as we record this.
Yes, definitely. So let's stick on that track, but, making a list of, what are all the beer and spirits brands, that are out there. And if you Google, strokes, and you can pull up lists like that, very easily. And then from there, you now, the companies you need to reach out to, but now you need to figure out who are the right individuals at those companies that I need to reach out to.
Yeah. And sending in the customer service form is probably not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, you never know though, use all your resources that you have to you. But, identifying then, okay, depending on your service offering, who's the right person? If you're in marketing, who are the marketing people? If you are in, supply chain, who are the supply chain people? But where do you even find that information? And, for a company like ours, we have access to, very expensive tools that could do this very easily for us. However, I know a lot of small businesses don't have that, but everybody's got a LinkedIn profile these days. And
you better have.
Guess what? You can go to LinkedIn and you can go into Heineken's profile and you could search for marketers, and very easily with, again, even the free versions of these tools, you can start to identify who are the decision makers at these companies. Who are
you might already be connected to them in some way. Who knows?
Right. You never know. You might be, or someone might be. So you can use a free tool like LinkedIn to start figuring out who those right people are. So then once you know the companies, the people, you then need to actually start doing the outreach to them. So this is where for some people this gets a little bit scary, right? But we find that there's really 3 channels that you can that are good outreach channels. You have email, which there are also free tools that you can use that will find the email addresses of these folks. You can go on LinkedIn, use the free plugin like a hunter.io, and you can get their email address free. So that's one channel. The phone is another, channel that you could pick up and call, and you could call Heineken's offices and ask to speak to, the prospect. So that is another channel. And this is all public information as well. And then you have LinkedIn. You're already on their LinkedIn profile. You can send them a connection request. You can send them an email. So you have a way to get in touch with these folks. But before you want to reach out, you need to think through, what are you going to say?
Right. Yeah. If they respond, what the heck are you going to say?
What are you going to say? Because the reality is these people are getting dozens, if not more, communications, because everybody wants to work with them.
How many we get every day.
Yeah. And imagine now if you held $1 million budgets at big companies, how many emails you would get. So you really want to think through, first of all, you want to personalize that message. Do not just do a copy and paste and send it off to everybody. Everybody can smell that a mile away. It's an instant delete. They're not going to read it. You could have the greatest solution out there to their problem, but if it just looks like a templated, mass email that went out to everybody, they're not going to open it. So do your due diligence and research these prospects and these companies, and have a compelling reason for why you're reaching out in the first place, right? Then, you're going to want to talk to them about, what is the pain point? Get right to it. Don't make it about me. Don't say, hi, I'm, Christian, and I own this type of company, and we do this.
I don't care. Sorry.
And we're located here. Like, it's got to be all about them. So just zero in, like, hey, we've been doing some research in your company. We think you might be experiencing these types of problems. We've got a really interesting solution about how to solve that problem. Is that something of interest to you? So make it all about how there's a problem and you have a potential solution about it. And the idea here is just to start a conversation. You are not going to sell a big company on one cold email. You just want to generate a response from them, see if there's some level of interest. If there is, then you can take it to the next level and get on a phone call with them. But you don't want it to be like a sales email. You want it to sound like it's a human to human email, like you would really write to a colleague of yours. So that's really the process, if you will. And the one thing I'll throw on there as well is, it's not going to probably come from the first email. You really need to do a multi-channel approach. So it may be an email, it may be a LinkedIn, it may be a phone call, and probably multiple of them.
We might be responding to a lot of their LinkedIn posts, commenting on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. How can you build a relationship with this individual? A virtual one, and really take it from that perspective, and understand that this is a long game. And I think if you go with that mentality, and you can solve a problem that they have, and you're niche down, and you have the right strategy in place, you can definitely break through to these organizations. And it's not going to be 100% of the companies you reach out to. It's going to be probably pretty low, but understanding that you might only get responses from 3 to 5% of the people you reach out to. However, knowing
if you don't try, you get zero.
Right, exactly. But knowing that, I think is powerful, because if you're going into it expecting 90% of people to respond to you and you getting 5%, you might think you're a failure. But the reality is, if you're getting 5%, you're actually probably doing a really good job. So it's all in the perspective.
Right. And you're so right that it is about building that relationship and that first communication. We get 5-10 pitches a week from people who want to be on the podcast. And, we get ones that are these, I don't get anywhere past just reading it in the preview pane. New so-and-so, new book, now accepting requests to be on podcasts. And I'm like, right? I mean, yeah. But when I get someone like how you were pitched to us, it was one of your assistants. And the first thing he said was, I listened to your podcast and I like it. Then he said, listen to your interview with somebody. And he said something about that. So he clearly had spent at least 5 minutes listening to the program. And then he said, I think that the gentleman I work for would be a great addition to your podcast. So that caught my interest, because he, as you said, he had done his homework. It wasn't just this, it wasn't a cold pitch. He had worked it through, And like I said, spent a little bit of time. I mean, who knows how long, but and when he said, "Hey, I listened to your interview with so and so, and I really loved it when he said da 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 da." Right there, he had me hooked.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, those pitches go to the top of our list. We get many from agencies. That's what they do. I mean, they're publicity people, they're PR folks, so they're pitching their clients. That's great. And that's where we still do get a majority of our guests, but those personal pitches go to the top.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good point. I know the kind of the topic of the day is really how to, get into these big organizations,
Mm-hmm.
but what we're talking about here is, the same process that we're using to book for podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Is the same process somebody can use to land a job if
Mm-hmm.
you're on the job
Right.
market.
Mm-hmm.
We're hiring right now, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting inundated with emails from.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing, like, same message every time. I'm applying for your job,
Mm-hmm.
at this. They've done no
And
research.
heaven forbid they start with "to whom it may concern."
Right. Oh, Jesus. Yes, that's, and I've gotten quite a few of
Especially in
those.
this day and age, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want a job here, take a couple minutes just to spend on the website, find out what we even do in the first place, and throw in there, some of the value that you can provide. But it's just people are it's not you want to take more of a quality-based approach than a quantity. And yes, there's a balance, because if you just plan on sending one email out, the volume is not there. But don't think that you need to send out thousands of emails. You want to balance the two.
Right.
You're just going to see much better results. But this type of mentality, I mean, it's it can be used in so many different ways. Big companies, small companies, getting a job, getting booked on podcasts, a variety of different things.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, it saves you time. You can send out the 1,000 pitches and hear back from nobody, or you can send out 10 where you spent more time and get a much better response rate.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I think when you start to get into the rhythm of this as well, in the beginning, it's going to be harder to get 10 maybe out. So start with 1 or 2, and then you'll start to figure out, what you do need to do to research. My assistant that reached out to you, he's got a process now. He does go through and he will, work a list on what are the podcasts that we think are a good fit for Christian. He'll take a quick look and listen to some of them and figure out, okay, are they a match or not? And I mean, that process probably was taking him, a half hour to do in the beginning. Now, to your point, you could probably get it done in 5 or 10 minutes, and it still comes across, as, okay, they at least took some time to look into it. I'm going to give them the benefit out and read the rest of the message versus an instant delete.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because we are busy, and I don't care what we're doing, what level of business, any of those things. And so we skim and we look for something very quickly. Whether it's the LinkedIn, "Hey, I want to connect with you" request, that's so generic. We're like, nope, 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 or the things, because we are very busy, but more importantly, whether it's our business or, a multi-gazillion-dollar business, we do have a fiduciary responsibility when we're committing funds. So we want to make sure that we are good stewards of doing that. And so we're not going to waste time, and certainly not money, and by just, doing it very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
I was looking through your website and it's got great information. You mentioned that you have a very specific niche. If you're not in that niche, there's still great information on the website, lots of good blog posts, things like that. So make sure that you look at it. But you have a process, and we're not going to give all the secrets away because we do want people to contact you, but it's called Propel, and it's an acronym. So kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So Propel is something that has been an evolution for me. It actually started, as I mentioned earlier, when I was working with that sales consultant. And for me, I think in frameworks and processes, and I was doing a lot of these different activities, but there was no kind of way to connect it all together. So I started to try to figure out, how do I make something that seems like a logical process to bring this all to life, right? So I'm happy to share with your audience a little bit about Propel. So it is an acronym, as you mentioned, and the first P of Propel is is what we call a pivotal problem.
Right.
And
we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, we've talked about that already, is really trying to identify what are those urgent and important problems that you can solve for a client, and starting right there. So whether that be, I can target Gen Z, or I can, help you out with your, sales and marketing efforts, whatever it happens to be, really zeroing in on that first and getting crystal clear. And you probably can solve a lot of different problems for clients, but starting to think through, what can I do unique that's different than others? What are those that are urgent and important? And I say that because if it's not urgent for somebody to solve, then they're probably not going to take action, on it. I think we all have things in our lives that we know should get done. I should clean out my closet, but there's no sense of urgency, behind it. So you want to,
I could still cram a couple things in there. So
exactly. So that's the first step. The R of Propel is what we call the right to win audience. So again, we started to talk about what are those right, categories of business, what are the right types of companies, who within those companies, what are the geography. So, and we call it the right to win, because we may want to win certain types of businesses, but we don't have the right necessarily to win. And we really try to look at, like, what is your past history and things like that that we've talked about. The O of Propel is what we call offering value. So this is where it goes into, understanding that philosophy of, like, I'm going to give you something before I ask for something back. So in the case of, like, say, Heineken, an agency may reach out and say, hey, we've done some research. We think you might be experiencing this problem. We've got an interesting perspective on it, how we've solved it for some other companies. We'd be willing to maybe do like a free 30-minute workshop with you to unpack some of those ideas, and maybe you get some value from it. We're not trying to charge you for it or anything like that, but we are looking, again, to try to build a relationship with those folks. And this is a way to do it. So again, think through, what do you have that, obviously you don't want to give away the house, but what can you give that is a taste of what you can do for them to start that relationship, off with them. So that's where the O comes in. The next P of Propel is professional persistence. And we talked about this a little bit as well, where it's not going to probably come from one email or from one cold call. You have to continually reach out to them, but do it so in a very professional way. Again, working towards building a relationship. The next part of Propel would be E, engaging messaging. And this is where we get into the areas of what we talked about, personalizing the message, really understanding, that, what is the problem that they're having, and writing something in short and concise. So this, something we didn't talk about as well, that I see a lot of people make the mistake of when they're starting off with this, is they are writing a novel.
I know. You get War and Peace and you're like, no.
Yeah. And that's, again, it doesn't matter what it says. That's going to be an instant delete for somebody. So, if you're sending out an email, you want to keep it under 100 words, and that can be challenging because there's a lot you want to say. You want to personalize the message, but, it really takes some strategy on your behalf to really kind of zero in on what are the most important things to say. And then also thinking ahead, we like to map out the entire sequence of messages.
If they respond, then what?
Yeah. And if they don't respond, then what as well? So you don't have to say it all in the first message. Maybe you talk about one of your benefits in email number 1, and then another benefit in email number 2, and your third benefit in email number 3. So you're not trying to cram everything all into, one message. So that's the E. And then the last part, L, is what we call launch and optimize in the Propel model. So the idea of launch is, obviously you got to send it out, but you're going to learn. We're still learning ourselves. This is what we do day in and day out. I've been doing it for years. Every client we work with is different. Every sector we work with is different. Things change seasonally. If we're reaching out in December, that might be different than if we're reaching out in the summertime. So there's a lot of things. So you got to constantly be looking at what's working, what's not working, and optimizing it. If you think you're just going to, set it and then forget it forever, you're going to end up, things are going to fall by the wayside. So just kind of, being experimental, A/B testing, and just having an open mind to trying different things. So that's kind of the Propel model, but we take all of our clients through it. And I just find it an easy way to just think about it from a sequential standpoint, everything that needs to get done, and just continually iterate on that.
Right. And of course, the important thing is that you have that plan. And I think so many times we just go into this thinking, okay, we're going to do this, and I joke about the fact that, what do you do when they request follow-up? I mean, but that is one of the biggest things is, you have to respond quickly. I mean, if you're thinking, well, I need to think about what we're going to say. Nope, you've lost them, because they got 20 other things on their plate and they're not going to remember you. So, having that strategic plan in place, people are going to go about it in different ways. I mean, I've seen people who have flow charts, the old if then, type of things. And okay, if that's how your brain works, that's fine. But you need to have those next steps. Years ago, when I was first deciding I was going to get into public relations, I was doing informational interviews, and this really was a very long time ago. And it's really funny because one of the first ones I got was I sent a physical letter. That's how long ago it was, to a gentleman named Swede Johnson. And Swede was the director of marketing at Coors. I'm from Colorado. And I honest to God don't remember what I said in the letter, but his assistant called me and said, Swede would like to meet with you. Can you come to Coors? And of course I said, yeah, after I got over there, right. But then I had to stop and think, okay, why am I going? Why am I going to make it worth his time to meet with me? And he was, absolutely one of the most gracious people in the world. Unfortunately, he passed away several years ago. But, one of the things that, I went in and I said, I've never done this, but this is what I want to do. And he took pity on me, and picked up the phone and called 3 people and said, you need to meet with this person. And that's really how I started in PR. But yeah, my first response was to hyperventilate. But when I did go in, I knew exactly what I was going to say. Otherwise I would have wasted everybody's time. And more importantly, he would have remembered that. So having your ducks in a row, you absolutely have to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And a couple of things that I want to add on to that is, you will probably mess things up the first time or 2 or 3. Right. We all go through it. Nobody gets on a bike and rides it right away on the first time. You're going to fall off a few times. So just understand that that's going to happen. So that's, again, a little bit of a mindset. But to your point about preparation, I usually like kind of this analogy of baseball, where your first encounter with the prospect is getting to first base. Right. But first base is not a run in baseball.
But you've got to get there to start.
How are you going to get the runner then to second and to third and then to home, and having a plan, because it's not going to go, from first or from home plate all the way. You're probably not going to get a home run, instantly. So having a plan in place, and, what part of what we do with our clients is thinking about, if we are doing some sort of like a free audit or a, light workshop or something, that is the first base type of offer. But then having in mind already a plan where, hey, if this seems to be going well, we can do a full audit, or we can do a full workshop for you, or we can do a test project for you. But having some of those in your back pocket before you even meet with the prospect. So, depending on where that conversation goes, you can direct it. Because if you are going to leave them to direct a conversation, that's when you a lot of times get, those types of interactions where it's like, oh, this was a great meeting. You shake hands, you go your separate directions, and nobody ever hears from each other
crickets,
again.
you never hear from them again.
Right. You need to engineer, where you want this to go. And keeping in mind, I don't know if you necessarily need a flow chart and all of that, but having a couple, arrows in your quiver, or whatever you cover, whatever analogy you want to use on what direction you can go. But keeping in mind that you're probably, especially with these bigger deals, you probably won't get the full project, from the first meeting. There are a lot of different steps along the way, and understanding that is key, and having a plan to get the runner to second, to third, and to home.
Right. And I keep coming back to the fact that it is all about building those relationships. We don't want to work with, spend time with, spend money with just Joe Schmo. We want to build those relationships. And so, that really is, to me, that is just the most critical part of it. And remember, it's going to take time. They're not going to get out their proverbial virtual checkbook, right? Does anybody have a real one anymore? On your first meeting, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And again, if you're talking about the bigger deals, there's usually a buying committee. You might have that first individual that you meet with, You need to make them your champion and build that relationship with them. But then they are going to get other individuals, and you're going to probably have to pitch everybody else again. So, it is this evolution, but again, it goes back to, having the right mindset about building a relationship. And it also goes into the mindset of, if that is your only deal you have, like, it's really hard to like not get so wrapped up to it and attached, to it. But if you have multiple deals that you're working at the same time, if I don't get the Heineken one, maybe I'll get the Coors one, or so but you got to put yourself out there in order to have that type of pipeline where you can have that confidence that all your eggs are not in one basket.
Right. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Christian, this has been so much fun, and we should do it again, because I think this is such great information for folks, because it really is, maybe we don't want to have 7-figure clients. I mean, one of the things that I've talked to guests about is, we have the fear of failure. There's also that fear of success, right? Oh my God, what if we get too big type of thing. But and so maybe you don't want the 7-figure, but it's as you said, it's all good techniques for whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so, I definitely want to chat with you again about this. But until then, tell us more about how people find with you and what are the services that you provide.
Yeah. So the best place to find me would be on the web. ChristianBanach.com is the hub and spoke, if you will, of everything. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. I think I'm the only Christian Banach out there, but I'll let you decide that. But in terms of like what we do, we do, as I mentioned, primarily work with marketing agencies and martech companies, but we work with other firms as well. And essentially, we have really two sides of the house. We have more of a consulting practice where we can advise, coach, help you develop the same types of systems that we talked about today, so you can do it internally on your own. And then we have another side of the house where it's more of a done for you model, where you may say, you know what, this is great. I know I need to be doing it, but I can't time or the knowledge to do it myself. Can we outsource it to you? And then we become more of a partner, where we are an extension of your team, and we can work and get you those business meetings with those big companies and get you in the room. And then you can go ahead and you can close it and sell and do the fun part that most people consider the pitch and the close, if you will. So that's really kind of the two sides of what we do, for our clients. And to learn more, definitely, check us out on the web. I have a free masterclass on there as well that you could register for, and really kind of talks about this process in much greater detail, and it's totally free.
Great. I love it. I love it. And as I said, your website is a great resource. There's lots of other fantastic information there. So, if you are the do-it-yourselfer, or the, oh my God, don't have the budget to do that, or, something like that, go there and look at the information, because it is very valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. And feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well if you have a question about something. I love
build those relationships, people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I do. Yeah. I would say, as you hear this, if you're a small business owner, or maybe you're looking to move on to another opportunity, I would just encourage you to have the confidence to do what we talked about today. It may seem scary to up level and work with bigger clients. Maybe it's not a 6 or 7, but everybody can work at a step above. Everybody can maybe get a job opportunity that's, maybe a little bit above where they think that they're at. So I can tell you, a lot of it is imposter syndrome. I'm sure in most cases that, you have the ability to do it. You just need that opportunity. But for some, you need to make and create that opportunity. And I encourage you to take that first step, and don't be scared, and just put yourself out there. Nothing, you're not, if you don't take the shot, you're not going to score. So
great. I love it. Well, I can't wait to hear more about how your pickleball goes. But more importantly, we do want to have you on again, because this is so critical for every size business. Doesn't matter what size of business, we can always use these tips to increase and improve and make our business even more successful. So, we will, I look forward to the next time we talk. I'm Deb Creer. I've been having a delightful conversation with Christian Banach. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.